Thank you so much for tuning into my show, William Wallace for America. Today's show is brought to you by the Wellness Company. You can improve your health and wellness and find a path that is right for you by going to twc.health/WWFA. The Wellness Company believes in medical freedom as much as you and I do. And you can get a discount using that promo code WWFA at the Wellness Company, twc.health. Today's episode is about some blurred lines. I've got some things that have been kind of coming across my mind lately that I want to share with you about where I think the lines are blurred, and we're going to go through that in the first half of my podcast, and in the last half, I'm going to go into some memes that are related to what I'm going to talk to you about a little bit. And again, please go visit twc.health/WWFA. Yesterday was King's Day. I'm not going to talk about King's Day today, but look for that podcast coming up. What I think is important to talk about today is that we're living out what I think are the blurring of the lines of where liberalism begins, what defines a libertarian, and where the far right actually begins and ends. And I mean by that is, liberalism has this undefined term. Some people think it begins with the socialists, the communists. Some people think it begins with the liberals. Some people think it begins with Democrats. What defines a libertarian? You'll see what I'm talking about with that in just a minute. And where the far right begins and ends, because I don't think that the right really knows where they begin or where they end, because a lot of them on the right, me particularly, I'm on the right, but a lot of my friends on the right will say they're on the right or they're conservative, but even the lines over there are blurred like they are on the left, but the lines are blurred on all of these definitions. And what I mean by this is that while there are people on the left side of the aisle pulling the Democratic Party further to the left using their narratives, it's making libertarians and even independents look like they're further right. I'll say that again. The further the Democratic Party pulls to the left, like we've seen in the narratives, and it's not all of them, the further or the more right libertarians look, or even the independents, and even more so the people on the right who consider themselves even further right, they look like they're right-wing wackos. I think it's by design. When you look at what the Democratic Party is doing, they're actually taking a small groups with them. They're losing people. It's obvious from what we've seen in the public that they're losing voters. Democrats are leaving, not in droves, but they're losing some of their base because of the ideologically they have some narratives that are pulling further to the left, and the Democrats are going, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. So they're going to the right. They're becoming more libertarian minded. They are exposing their conservative beliefs, because like I've always told you on my show, that I believe conservatism knows no boundaries, and there's probably as many people with conservative values on the left than there are on the right. But because they're told that conservative values are bad, they have them, don't realize that they're really conservative. They won't admit it, or they won't realize that they deny it, willful ignorance, because I don't want to be one of those conservatives. But value-wise, they do a lot of things that where they live like conservatives. So again, these lines are blurred on all the parties. And as the Democrat Party, which I think there are some people that are intentionally bringing a lot of they're taking narratives. They're intentionally bringing these issues further to the left within the party to bring the party further to the left. I think it's a calculated way of doing this, but as a way to be able to centralize their power, if you will. So in a world where we have seen agendas and narratives get pushed further to the left, someone being a libertarian seems like a far right winger. It's intentional, like I said. It makes it harder for, I think the reason why it's intentional is because it's going to make it harder for some Republicans to win in some of the districts. I think it's by design, because let's think about it. If you pull your base, or you centralize your power on some of the ideologies and narratives that they're doing, and you bring it further to the left, you make the people in the middle, the independents, libertarians, you make them look like they're the real conservatives, or they're kind of like a little moderately wacko. You make the people on the right look even more wacko. So when they start talking about things that look like they're really far away, it makes it hard. It's going to make it harder for a Republican to win in some areas. I'll explain that in just a minute. And not that a libertarian is bad, but a lot of libertarians get the bad rap of, no borders. They go, oh, that's those libertarian minded people. They don't believe in borders. Well, not all libertarians believe in borders. Again, the lines are blurred for being a libertarian, but the libertarian, um, the Libertarian Party has kind of an accumulation of people with various beliefs, just like the Republicans and the Democrats. But the lines within them are also becoming more blurred. We are surrounded by common sense, and the truth is easy to see, but people are ignoring the truth because the narratives are so much more addictive, and they're hot and juicy like gossip to talk about. I mean, let's face it, when Joe Biden was president, everybody wanted to talk about how senile he was and look how he fell. And, you know, a lot of those things were being used as the hot topics for distraction purposes. But the reality is they are also used to divide us up. And as they get us divided up, they can blur the definitions of what defines you in a party. And those stories are the ones that make the people, what I referred to a minute ago, are the ones that make the people in the middle look even crazier to the Democrats and even the Republicans. And again, this shift within the parties and the narratives being used by the Democratic Party, this shift blurs the lines in such a way that even though we can say, man, those Democrats are really getting crazy because they're believing in Mandami in New York, who is going to usher in high taxes and things that sound more communist. And you've heard all the news stories. You look them up and you hear about how they're ushering in immigrants. And you go, well, that's crazy. But the thing is, the more they centralize their power on these ideologies, the more power they have in their party, and they're able to win key elections. And they are targeting the blurring of these lines in specific districts where it's going to work. And look, I see it on both sides. It's why I try to stay away from the hot topics from our friends on the right, because as everybody circles around their news cycles and their news stories, they become more addicted to the news stories and the narratives than they do not only truth, but the things that are going to solve problems, to the things that we really need to focus on, like how the bureaucratic state is stealing our freedoms rather, or how politicians have put us into $40 trillion in debt and they keep kicking the can down the road. They'll say that, or you get in these groups and they'll say things like, we're fighting for windmills or whatever. And I'll say, again, the bureaucratic state is stealing our freedoms. I'm saying I said that wrong. They're not fighting for windmills. They're fighting for no windmills. That's just kind of a thing I pulled out of my ears. But you know what I'm talking about. In the circles and the groups that you get involved in, everybody has an agenda that aligns with their party or the group that they're in, whether it's a right-leaning group or a left-leaning group, and everybody starts talking about more about that hot topic than they do the overall picture. And not that they're centralizing power, in this case, towards ending windmills, something I made up, just to give you an example. The reality is they focus on one thing, they get their own narratives, and they become blind to everything else that's going on that's dividing us up in our country. Do I think there's a man behind a curtain that's controlling it? The Wizard of Oz pulling the little gears and stuff like that? No, I don't. But I do think there are enough political strategists that have figured out how to use the right combinations of narratives, the media, your ideologies, and shift it in a way to win elections, which is why I think that the Democratic Party, pulling farther to the left, is able to do that and get away with it while still losing some of their base, because when the base thinks they're crazy, but by centralizing that power in key cities and states, they win elections. We look at it, we scratch our heads. How can New York want 50-something% taxes and free rent for illegals and all the different things that Madami is running on? And how can they elect somebody, like Madami after what they've been through on 9/11? There's a lot of people scratching their heads. But again, you look at, even though they've pulled further to the left in New York, they can centralize enough power to be able to create enough narratives where they don't need a core base. They can win elections just by with their power to be able to market their narratives correctly. The narratives being tied to their agendas have been designed like drugs to keep people high and attached, to keep them entertained and distracted. People become willfully ignorant to the truth because the news stories are wrapped up in the narratives with an ideological topping to make it so much tastier than the truth. And as a result, the left is winning on these news cycles, and everyone on the right is allowing it to happen. See, I love my friends on the right, but I'm going to call out everybody in this. I'm not leaving my Republican friends. I'm not moving away from the right. I've been in those circles. I belong in those circles because I lean to the right. Even though I listen to my friends on the left, and I have lots of friends that on the left that have things that I agree with, I'm not going to hang out in Democrat circles. So the only thing that makes me right is my Republican circles, and I guess people from the slightly left of center to far right is kind of my space. And by hanging out in multiple spaces, I recognize when even my friends on the right aren't going in the correct direction, when they are, basically trying to solve things on an ideological narrative base on the right side, as well as what we complain about on the left side. That's how they're allowing things to happen. When my friends on the right, and I don't necessarily mean on a local level, so don't take this the wrong way. I don't mean on local issues. It's a whole nother story. You really have to focus on key issues on local elections, simply because of the fact that your local, where you live, you have more of an effect on local issues than you do on a national level. So I'm just referring more to a national level. My friends on the right are oftentimes calling out the narratives that the left is perpetuating. That's an example. Well, the left is putting these things out to distract us. And by them distracting us, on those narratives, we lose power. We end up focusing on the distractions instead of what they're actually doing wrong, or instead of watching how they're centralizing their power and not only getting away with it in the meantime, but winning elections. And we scratch our heads going, how did they get Chicago? How did we think, oh, what's a Democrat city? Or New York, it's a Democrat city. And we just go, it's because it's a Democrat city. But the reality is, if we focused on issues instead of narratives, and we focused on common sense, fiscal responsibility, and the conservative values that bind us together from the left of center to even the far right, we would win all the elections, all of them. And that's how we don't allow it to happen, by really finding those ways to not be distracted and fight the narratives that they keep creating, but by fighting the issues. Because the left keeps moving the football further to the left. We keep kicking at it and we keep missing it because they keep moving it and they keep moving it further to the left, but we keep trying to kick it again. Meanwhile, all we're kicking is the can down the road instead of focusing on the things that we can get done. We need to change the game. And while their new ideological normal on the left is becoming more concentrated in their inner circles, their base is actually getting smaller, but more powerful, because they are winning in the major cities with candidates that believe in things that are socialist and even communistic, if you will. While they are losing people, they are concentrating their power, and as a result, they're getting a sympathy vote on certain narratives. So what happens is they lose their base, they're losing people because a lot of people don't want to go to the far left extremes, but they still keep a little hook attached to their heart. So every so often, when they really need those people, they still got them hooked, because the narratives that are tugging on their hearts still let them reel them back in when they need them. Things like immigration, poverty policies, and I mean by poverty policies, the policies that keeps people fighting for scraps, election stealing, ballot harvesting. All of these things have helped Democrats to not only use as tools, but use as tools by the people that they rally around their concentrated base. So they concentrate their base. They've got certain tools, like I said, immigration, poverty policies that keep people in poverty, even letting crime get out of hand, because high crime keeps elected officials in Democrat cities in power. That's why they've concentrated their around certain of that's why they concentrate around these ideas. It helps them to use those things to magnify the blow of all the arrows in their quivers that I just now mentioned. In other words, while they push further to the left and lose many people on the lunacy of some of their ideas, it's almost like they are putting them in a voting bank for later, if you will. Meanwhile, making the people in the middle look crazy and the people on the right look way out there. Because I've seen it. I even see my libertarian friends and my Democrat friends, they'll talk about something that the Republicans are talking about, or the Republicans are trying to get on, and they'll go, man, look at those people. They're crazy. Well, because I hang out on the right side and I hang out with my friends and Republican friends, I don't see it as crazy. I simply see it, some of those issues, as being distractions, which are blurring our own lines in our own groups, that are causing us to be a little disorganized in our approach to be able to, let's face it, We're not fighting the left. We're not fighting libertarians, independents. That's not who our fight is with. Our fight is with elected officials that are doing the wrong thing. Our fight is with politicians that are robbing us through our taxes. They're robbing us through the national debt. They're robbing us in the bureaucratic states. They're robbing us in taxes. They're robbing us in the fees. They're robbing us in the red tape. But because the lines have gotten so blurred, we don't even know who we can team up with, simply because we're too busy chasing the shiny object. And that, my friends, is what we have to start ignoring and start looking at those. Instead of looking at the blurred lines or trying to figure out where the lines are, we need to seriously find out the things that unites us. And uniting ends up being a dirty word. A lot of people, oh, there they are trying to unite with, cross the aisle, leave the people. It's not a bad thing if you don't give up your core beliefs or your ideologies. You can hang on to your core beliefs and your ideologies, and you can continue to live your personal life the way you want to live it, that aligns with your values. And you can hang out with people who do the same. But at the same time, you're not going to get anything done if you galvanize on the right and everybody galvanizes on the left. I get it. You can say it's right versus wrong. We're right and they're wrong. Completely understand that. But while everybody's galvanizing in their own personal beliefs on the right or on the left, all the elected officials are getting away with it. And I'm not saying they're all bad. Look, I got tons of Republicans I love. I got some Democrats I think are doing the right thing. Lots of independents and libertarians out there. But what happens is when they all start working together collectively, their bargaining process is not necessarily reaching across the aisle. It's for power. It's for continuation of spending on their own pet projects. It's to keep the people that are keeping them in office happy. Big business, big industry, lobbyists, and such. We aren't fighting that fight. We just want to fight for our personal liberties, our personal freedoms, less taxes, responsible government, less government. The things that not only make our country prosperous, but the things that make the future generations prosperous. The land that will provide a place for our kids to not only enjoy and prosper, but be happy in, without being in a surveillance state or in a country where government has all the control, because that's where it's headed, because we're so busy fighting amongst ourselves. And I'm not saying sing kumbaya here. I get it. I'm saying do not give up your values. Do not give up your ideologies. Do not give up your personal beliefs. Hold on to those like it's your death grip. Hold on to those because you're never going to let them go. Those are the things that guide your heart and your conscience, and you should never lose sight of them or let them go. But don't let them dictate your political battles on a national level that keep you from finding more people to unite with, to the point where politicians must, not shall, may, not shall, listen to us. But what's interesting is that even some people that consider themselves on the right, on the far right, or conservatives against these blurred lines, they don't always do things that are conservative. Just like the Democrats on the other side are sometimes actually more conservative, but aren't doing all things that are Democrat. The reason it's like that is because of those blurred lines and those little narratives, those little carrots that make that kind of keep them in those circles. And the lines are blurred because of all the circles, which is why we need to stop giving the people in power, dividing all of us with the control they're using to blur the lines. And everybody says, I know, you're preaching to the choir. I get it. We all know it's politics, it's power, it's how it happens. The problem is everybody keeps doing it. We all keep giving them more power by obeying and clinging to the narratives that they use to divide us in the first place. We have to stop trying to kick the football and change the game instead. I'm not criticizing my friends on the right. I'm not even I'm like I said, ideologically, I'm on the right. But again, the more I listen to my friends on the left and in the middle, the more I go, wait a minute. They're sounding like they're on the right too. So my point is, I'm not criticizing, not leaving my friends, not calling, not leaving, my not putting my votes for Republicans in the past out to pasture. I'm simply saying that if we really want to speak truth, we have to show where the problems are on all the sides. We can't just stick to our side and not listen to other people. Because if we're sticking to our side and we take these are my beliefs, my ideologies, and I'm not listening to you. Again, you don't have to give up your core beliefs to listen, to find a solution that actually might steer the country back to the right in our own direction if all we did was simply stepped out of our box a little bit, ignore the narratives, and listen a little bit and find that solution that's better for all of us. I'm not, the other thing is I want to make a hard note on is I'm not a lapdog. I'm not trying to burn down the house either. I'm just trying to point out that if we focused on the fewer things that we agree on, we would have elected officials being more accountable to us. Look, I'll bring up Trump. I certainly appreciate the direction of a lot of his policies, but sometimes he says and does things that I don't like. I'm not a lapdog or say I don't like something if I don't like it. And I'm also going to, something he does something I like, I'm going to say, hey, I like it. Like I said, I like the direction of his policies in general. I just don't like all the things that he says or some of the things he does to get there. I am going to say this, though. A couple of things, actually, that I don't like right now that are going on that Trump has done. Student loan forgiveness. Remember when the Republicans were like, oh, the Democrats want to, they want to forgive the student loans. And, the Democrats, they're, Joe Biden's, the best way to get rid of a student loan is to pay it. And we criticized the Democrats when they were talking about loan forgiveness. Now you've got Trump is considering debt forgiveness. And I got an article here that I'm going to read just a little bit of it to you for, where it says, in a significant win for student loan borrowers, the Trump administration has agreed to a court-supervised plan that will speed up debt cancellation under income-driven repayment programs and protect borrowers from unexpected tax bills next year. The administration and the American Federation of Teachers reached the agreement Friday in the AFT versus U.S. Department of Education case, resolving months of legal tension over the government obligation to cancel student debt for borrowers who have made decades of payments under the federal law. That story was by Greg Wenner, Wehner, is where I got that article on that. So my point, again, is not to call out Trump, But if we don't point out when we don't agree with somebody, one, we get labeled a lapdog, but two, we become complicit. We become hypocrites. If all the years before Trump, we were going to criticize Biden for calling out student loan or going to use to pay off student loans or forgive them, and now that Trump's doing it, we got to talk about that too. The Democrats are saying, well, he can't pay for he's shutting down the government for Medicare or Medi-Cal, whatever it is, or, not paying medical bills, which of course, we all know that is medical bills for illegals, but he can pay for a ballroom. Well, the ballroom is being done through private donations, which does make me question why we're having work done on federal property at the White House done with donations. But why are we focusing on a ballroom? Our country has so many more problems. And I know it's going to be the big, beautiful ballroom, and maybe one day I'll see it. Who knows? But again, why are we focusing on that? It's not a bad call out, but I mean, look, we got to focus on the problems. The other thing that I didn't agree with recently is the King's Day, the No King's Day video. I don't know how true that is. It came from a Trump post that shows him flying the plane and dropping poop on the protesters. I don't agree with that. I mean, if we're going to have, I don't care what side our president is ideologically on, as if they got in office legally, but you represent all people. And I get the funniness. Oh, believe me, look, I get the humor in it. I get it. The concept is funny, but the reality of it is that we're not going to bring more people to our side if we're always throwing poop bombs at the other side. I think I'm sounding more like a libertarian these days, not because I'm pulling away from the Republican Party. I know I've said that a bunch of times, but I want the party to focus on more things that protect our freedoms and our country in the future, like fiscal responsibility. We got a party holding fast on things that I agree with right now in this shutdown, like we should not be paying medical care for illegals. We should not be sending our money to foreign governments for things like LGBTQ studies or whatever some of this really wasteful spending is that's being done through groups which are usually narrative driven by the Democrat leftists that are trying to centralize their power. And they are trying to, at the same time, blur the lines so they can keep these programs going. But I do agree with shut down the government. We don't need some of this non-essential stuff. I get it. My friends who work for the government are going to call me tomorrow. I get it. However, the point being is we've got to becoming fiscally responsible is going to be very difficult. It's look, we're $40 trillion in debt. There's not going to be anything easy about it now, but it's going to be even harder later. If we don't downsize government now and get that debt going in reverse, it's going to be impossible later. I get it. Like I said, I'm sounding like a libertarian, not because I believe in the Republican Party, but because I want the party to focus on those things that protect our freedoms. We got a party holding fast, and I'm happy for it. But we also, at the same time, have to find some ways to change the game, because when you have to play the game like this, there's no winners. And if you have played the game like this, it's going to come back to haunt us later in the midterms. But let's face it, we are here because of years of irresponsibility on both sides. We can cheer our Republicans now for standing their ground. But generations ago, they were doing wasteful spending. The only difference between today and the years ago of irresponsibility is that Now we don't have 100 yards to go. We're on the first yard line, and it's fourth down, and we're down by $40 trillion, and we're holding fast to narratives just to beat the other side down with. Hold on, I get it. I'm not speaking two different things. I agree with the shutdown right now. Hold fast. We need to get rid of wasteful spending. But at the same time, we have to find ways to win the fight earlier so we don't get to this point where we are today. And don't be fooled with when everything collapses, elected officials are like, when everything they'll be happy if things collapse, because then they'll just introduce another patriot style bill that will control us even more, of course, for the greater good. And then they'll blame the man behind the trees. And also, just something to take notice of before I get to the memes here in a second, if you take notice, they all change their agendas anyway based on the political wins. I know, I know. Well, we need to start calling that out. That's the game. We tend to ignore the fact that they've changed their agendas, because remember, the Democrats, they believed in legal immigration. Now they don't. Now they're hinting they do. Republicans say they want want legal immigration now, but it's all a shell game, and we're not winning it right now. We're not going to win the game unless we change the rules. And we, the people, where's more of us, we can change the game simply by not being played with the narratives and ideologies that are being used to divide us up. We can get this. We can win this if we do what our government was originally designed to do from the bottom up. And again, one last thing before I bring on some memes here. I get it. The other thing that Republicans will tell you is, the Democrats are, they want all this illegal immigration. Well, you know what? It's like Obamacare. The Republicans knew that the Democrats wanted control of the healthcare system. They knew it for 50, 60, 70 years. They didn't do anything. So the Democrats got Obamacare in and really screwed things up, which is part of what's happening in this bill right now. Immigration. Everybody's known the immigration system has been screwed up for the last 50, 60 years, but nobody does anything about it. Republicans, you better fix it right now while you're in control, because the next presidential cycle, if a Democrat gets in there and they get control, they take control of a broken immigration system. We'll never see an American population. Well, that's the wrong way to say it. We'll never have control of the immigration problems to come ever if you don't fix it now. It'll be extremely screwed up. I do have some memes I want to finish out the show with that are pertinent to what we've been talking about. Got an image here on one side, says if a liberal from 1960 showed up today, here's a picture of John F. Kennedy, they would be considered conservative. And if a liberal from today showed up in 1960, they would be considered a communist. No need to scratch your heads here. It's just fact. The lines are blurred. Maybe they weren't blurred then. Maybe they're being blurred now. Either way, the lines are being blurred intentionally, because as times change, narratives change, different things happen. They got to change the rules of the game, right? They're going to still keep trying to make you kick that football, though. Picture of Donald Trump. I think it's actually his arrest photo. I'm not sure. Where he looks into the camera, and a picture of a woman in the back. It says the Democrat strategist Liz Smith just admitted the 34 felony charges against President Trump were part of the Democrat Party's resistance strategy, not a legitimate case. Of course, there were the conspiracies a while back. People on the right were saying, you see, they brought these charges against him and, they're all made up. And then, of course, I had friends on the left or slightly left of center or wherever that so no, Trump is guilty. Well, now we're finding out as time has gone on with all the different news stories, which I'm talking about. I don't have time in this show to talk about those in particular stories, but we see all the things unfolding that kind of prove what Liz Smith just now said, is that all those years and charges were all part of a strategy to undo an election. This quote is by Thomas Sowell. The welfare state is the oldest con game in the world. Brought this up because I said earlier that the Democrats, one of the ways that Democrats control cities is through poverty and crime. And I'll add to that, the welfare state is how our politicians in DC control certain populations. And I don't mean color of your skin, because there's more white people on welfare than there are black people. Actually, I don't know if that's an exactly accurate, but proportionally it's true, because there's more white people than are black people. It doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't even matter how they're supposed to vote. The fact that we have a massive population in our country that are being controlled by policies that our government has created or that politicians within our government have created, and they're using those policies and poverty to control certain parts of our population, is a sin in itself. And it's something that we can all, if we're working together, we can stop. I've got one of a bunch of people. It's Asian. They're either Asian or Oriental looking, and they're all holding up food. And it says in the words, it says, and this one's from the Freedom Foundation: communism inverts merit, rewarding the corrupt while suppressing the honest, crippling society's productivity. We look at people on the right and in libertarians crazy when they bring up the words communism and socialism. Oh, we don't have that in our country. But when you read this quote, we reward the corrupt, and there's corrupt elected officials, and we reward them by keeping them in office. We suppress the honest. We call them conspiracy theorists or far right wingers, or even there's some people on the left that may have some truth. And when we do that, we cripple society and we cripple the productivity of our country in a way that we, the people, lose power amidst our constitutional rights. This was about Thomas Massey. Dogs don't bark at parked cars. There's a reason some of the world's richest and most powerful people are trying to get me out of Congress. I'm just one of 435 votes, but I bring transparency to an otherwise dark and corrupted institution of government. If you follow Thomas Massey, you will find regular quotes, regular things that he is saying that is exposing things. And my next meme is from Donald Trump related to Thomas Massey, where Donald Trump is criticizing Thomas Massey. I don't agree with this. Okay. I've pointed out a few things about Donald Trump that I don't agree with. Again, not because I'm turning against him, just simply as a wake-up call for everybody to take notice of, that we can't just blindly, with willful dissidence, willful ignorance, however you want to say it. We can't just be blind and go, "Up, I like the direction of his policies," which I do, so I like everything and defend everything. Because if we defend everything, we're going to have problems in the midterms, and we're going to have problems in the next presidential election, because everybody on the left is going to say, everybody on the right supported this. But if we differentiate ourselves a little bit, we call out the missteps, or things that we don't like, then we're going to be able to find a candidate that can fight the battles that are thrown at them with the narratives on the left. I'll explain a little bit deeper. If we allow all of the missteps or things that we don't agree with to hang on our neck like a badge of honor because we support the person that said it, those medals are going to hang around our neck like a weight that sinks us down in the midterms and the presidential election. We have to positively point it out as a way to say, whoever's stepping into the next presidential shoes, you need to realize that we don't agree with these words or this behavior or these policies. That's how we get better, because we haven't been doing that over generations and generations, which is why we keep getting the elected officials that we keep getting that do things that we don't like. So Donald Trump says third-rate Congressman Thomas Massie, a weak and pathetic rhino from the great Commonwealth Company of Kentucky, a place I love, and won big 6 times, must be thrown out of office ASAP. The incredible power of Kentucky's 4th congressional district gave us a mandate to make America great again. I don't agree with calling out a fellow Republican. Ronald Reagan said it himself, thou shalt not speak evil of a fellow Republican. My next meme is a Patriot Mobile meme. Please consider switching your cell phone service to a company that loves America and fiscal responsibility and our Constitution and our freedoms as much as you do. Go to patriotmobile.com/WWFA for some free activation. Go check them out. The next meme is a picture of Donald Trump. It says the White House agrees to cancel student loan debt for millions of borrowers. I've already pointed that out a little earlier. Didn't sync up those comments, but that's okay. I didn't mean to not to anyway, or mean to anyway. So, but again, the best way to get rid of student debt is to pay it. I get it. Is this something that's being done to prepare for midterms? Is it strategic? We wouldn't, our elected officials would not have to do this if they always did the right thing. Instead of finding strategic little things here and there to have as an arrow in your quiver to win the next election or the next election cycle, is I'm not calling out specifically Donald Trump here. I'm calling out all the elected officials that have done stuff like this in the past. If they were always accountable, then these heavy swings of ideological beliefs and narratives that you push depending on which way the political wind shifts would not have to be done. My next meme is Davy Crockett, old picture of some old dude. Individuals have the right to give away as much money as they please to charity. Members of Congress have no right to appropriate a dollar of the public's money. Actually, the House of Representatives does have the right to the budget, but the problem is we've been taxed so much and we've given them so much power that they're able to get away with it a little bit more willy-nilly, we'll say now, than it used to be. And something I've always said why I support nonprofits, because if it went back to the old days and charity, people gave to charity or extended charity to those in need, instead of giving the government the power to take care of people in need through the government programs, we the people would have a bigger effect on people in need, and our government would have less control over our money. My next meme up here is in the case in which it's a quote by Milton Friedman. In a case, I'll switch it up a little bit. Milton Friedman says, in the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, The only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. So it goes back to what I've been saying. The only way to escape poverty is through capitalism and free trade. But our elected officials have created so many bureaucratic agencies and have strapped us with so many regulations and rules on capitalism and limiting businesses. And I get it. Well, those regulations help keep our air and water clean. I get those. But there's thousands, if not millions more that tie the hands of capitalism and free trade. And some will say that the tariffs today are limiting free trade. I talked to a friend of mine earlier who has an import-export company, and his business is down almost 50% because of the tariffs. When you put government in the way, and I get tariffs, but it's how our early America funded our government. But again, if it's not being done for ideological narrative or control reasons, then it can be done a little bit more efficiently in a way that we still benefit from tariffs and trades, but our capitalism and free trade systems are not hurt. My next meme up here is from Secretary Marco Rubio. It says, this week, the UN is attempting to pass the first global carbon tax, which will increase energy, food, and fuel costs around the world. We will not allow the UN to tax American citizens and companies. Under the leadership of POTUS, the U.S. will be a hard no. We call on other nations to stand alongside with the United States in defense of our citizens and sovereignty. You want to know why they don't want the UN to tax us? Because the UN will get all the money and they won't even give the U.S. a cut. They'll get all the money and the politicians here in America won't get any of it. That's why they won't let the UN tax us. Not because of I know I'm being ugly. I get it. But it's a tongue-in-cheek joke. But I'm be positive. I bet there's a lot of reality to it that politicians here doesn't want the UN taxing us because politicians here in America, or America will say, won't get any of it. That's the real reason. Just like they don't want to give the UN any control because they'll lose the actual control. They never leave Congress because the grift is too good. Chuck Grassley is 91, Eleanor Norton, 88, Hal Rogers, 87, Maxine Waters, 87, Steny Hoyer, 86, Nancy Pelosi, 85, Jim Clyburn, 85, Mitch McConnell, 83, Bernie Sanders, 83, etc. Congress ends up being a corrupt taxpayer nursing home, which is another reason to get more people involved. Stop listening to the narratives. Get out there, get more people involved, and vote, and stop letting them circle the wagons around their little fiefdoms. John Fetterman just blew up. It's another meme with John Fetterman in the picture, and a little meme above it. It says John Fetterman just blew up Democrats' shut down narrative. Fetterman, quote, shutting the government is really what the Democrat Party wants to do. Obamacare subsidies were designed by the Democrat Party to expire. This is not something taken by the Republicans. Again, if a Democrat does something good, I'm going to point it out. I know. Well, of course you're going to point out what he's saying, support what he's saying, because it makes your point. Well, it's just a common sense point, because I'm not against the shutdown if it shuts down government for reasons that make it more fiscally responsible. But this points out that there's a game being played behind the scenes. Thomas Sowell, quote with a picture of Thomas Sowell in a suit, says there have always been ignorant people, but they haven't always had college degrees to make them unaware of their ignorance. Some people imagine they are well informed because they have memorized a whole galaxy of trendy dogma and fashionable attitude, by Thomas Sowell. I like that one because it goes along with what's happening today with the narratives, the ideologies, and the hot news stories. People tend to walk away from their intelligence because the news narratives and ideologies are a lot more addictive and believable in some cases, or made to be believable than the facts. It's harder, it's easier to believe the soft lie, especially when it's a hot flashing narrative, than it is a hard truth that you might have learned in school, which is why I like that meme. Next meme picture of Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth says, breaking, President Trump just ordered the payment of U.S. troops, ensuring they will not miss their paychecks, despite Chuck Schumer's shutdown, which the next meme has a picture of Chuck Schumer's, and it says, Democrat leaders start legal actions to stop Trump from paying troops during the government shutdown. Again, this is just proof they don't care about doing the right thing. To them, burn it all down, collapse it to the ground. That way, they end up getting more control and they can win elections while the people suffer. Because the reality is here, if our military doesn't get paid, we all heard the stories about how they're having to go to food banks. We're not supporting our military. Them and their families are suffering, especially when they're separated, when one military person is overseas and the family is here in America, whatever the case may be. They don't care. And I'm pointing this out for the sheer fact that we have to show the political game. We have to show them moving the football so we can change the game to be able to kick a field goal next time. On my football analogies. And my second to last meme is a picture of the guy that, what's his name, played Willy Wonka. I know. It's from the Willy Wonka movie. You get what I'm saying. It says, so the government shuts down and the country keeps going. I wonder if there's a lesson in that. The point that I've been making on all my shows, government bureaucracy has gotten so deep and so big, and so much of it is not needed. It takes a government shutdown to prove it. So for that reason, I'm all for it. I get it. I got friends who are probably, yelling and cursing right now because of the government shutdown. But the reality is the government, so much of it is not needed. I get there's a lot of parts of it that are needed. Look, there's a lot of it that's needed. But why don't we take the black light to it and get rid of the government that's not needed? Because if a shutdown, if government can happen, and our country's still operating when there's a government shutdown, why don't we take that black light and the ones that aren't needed, get rid of it? Anyway, that's a short thought for a longer show later. And my last meme is a picture of George Orwell on the screen. It says, a generation of the unteachable is hanging upon us like a necklace of corpses. And I thought when I read this, I was trying to go, a generation of, and I get it. A generation of the unteachable refers to the meme I brought back up a little bit ago, are the opposite of it, where people go to college, they learn all kinds of knowledge, but they ignore the knowledge and they cling to the narratives and the and the news stories instead of knowing and thinking about the facts. The opposite is a generation of unteachable is hanging upon us like a necklace of corpses. So I'm going to change this because I don't think that we have a generation of unteachable people. I know this is from a while back. I don't think we've ever had unteachable people because the narratives and ideologies and the belief systems that make people adhere to policies that are bad and defy common sense have created a generation of people who don't think. The fact that they believe in things that aren't factual, the fact that there's people who believe in the narratives that are based on zero facts, prove that we can still teach them. We can teach them anything. The problem is that they're hanging around our neck, not like a necklace of corpses, but like a necklace of weights that will sink us to the bottom and drown us if we don't do something to stop it now. Because I really appreciate your time that you spent with me, and I would love it if you shared the podcast and share this video with somebody that you think might be interested in it. And I'd also be very grateful if you went to some of my sponsors, gave them some business, like Richardson Nutritional, where you can get apricot seeds. If you know, you know. And you get a discount at rncstore.com/WWFA. Visit Patriot Mobile by going to patriotmobile.com/WWFA. And then also, don't forget the wellness company at twc.health/WWFA. That promo code gets you some discounts. And again, I appreciate all your time. God bless America. God bless you for doing what you look. Just listen to this podcast. You're doing something to be able to get more informed and be able to help do your part. Thank you so much.